Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host JP John Paz from the Two Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me is the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, John, a very special recording for us today. A little bit of a backstory for, of course, our loyal listeners. For the last couple of weeks, we've certainly been talking about the business of TNA. And one of the first things I came across was our guest tonight's LinkedIn profile, who really broke down the business of TNA related to her areas, and some of which was so technical that I didn't understand what it all meant. And then she had a wonderful, what I would describe as a case study on her website, really talking about something that we've talked about for a year, the success of TNA, especially with the team that they had together from about April 24th through late March 25th. So without further ado, I wanted to welcome Glazer to the show, who is a partner in Prestige Management Group, a marketing executive, and recently of Anthem Sports and Entertainment as a fractional marketing executive. Welcome.
Guys, what's going on? What a pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So we're going to get into obviously TNA and wrestling and everything that Lavie's saying, but I was just curious because it's just an interesting world. Everybody, like we were talking to you before, people in China we've had on the show, people in Mexico that run AAA, everywhere. So where did you grow up, and were you a sports fan growing up?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, grew up Detroit, Michigan. Currently in Brooklyn, New York. So Lavie, I think you're a Bronx guy, right? So you're just like down the street. You a Santana fan as well?
I am a Santana fan.
Okay, great. Okay, great. I gotta say, like, if you see any of the Mustafa Ali posters up in your neighborhood, be sure to tear them down because he's putting them up to really get under Mike Santana's skin. So, but yeah, John. So yeah, Brooklyn, New York now. Detroit, Michigan is where I grew up. Yes, sports fan. I was lucky enough to kind of come of age when the Red Wings were coming up. That was great. We got the Pistons, of course. You had the Bad Boys, and then kind of that second team with Ben Wallace and Rip Hamilton and those guys. So I was super. It was great to grow up in Detroit at that time.
You got to mention to me the best player on the team, Let It Sheed, Rasheed Wallace, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
Rashid for sure,
yeah,
100%.
yes,
Detroit
yes.
basketball, and hey, good team this year too.
Shockingly, yeah, there actually are.
Hmm.
I think it's the best turnaround ever in the history of basketball. Like as far as going from work to actually going to make the playoffs.
And we've been waiting for it too. I mean, you've got Cade Cunningham on the team, and just like the whole cast and crew over there, like they're doing great work. So I don't know, we'd love to see it.
What about wrestling? Were you always a wrestling fan? Did you follow wrestling?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, also a wrestling fan. The big question is always like who your favorite wrestler is, and so I've thought about it a lot, and I have to say probably Lex Luger, primarily because growing up in Detroit, I was lucky enough to also be in the crowd at SummerSlam '93 to see him versus Yokozuna, and then also that big Nitro where he beat Hogan for the title. So it was just like great Lex Luger moments in Detroit when I was growing up. So yeah, big wrestling fan, love it.
That's
Great
awesome.
business.
That's awesome. Yeah, SummerSlam '93, great show. Kind of a under the radar show. I think it's one of the better shows of that era.
Yeah. I mean, really loved it. I think, Ted DiBiase's last singles match, maybe. I
Yep,
think,
in
and
the
a
states
lot of
anyway.
other.
WWF definitely.
Yeah, so I don't know, super fun. Lex won, balloons fell down. I had a blast.
Steiner's Heavenly Bodies was great. Maybe my favorite match
Oh,
of the show.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's true. Yeah. It's been a while,
Uh,
so I haven't actually thought about the card, but love it.
yeah, guy that's been in the news lately. The because of Dark Side of the Ring, Ludwig Borga destroys Marty
Oh,
Jannetty on that show as well.
it's true. Yeah.
So interestingly, though, from being a fan and obviously the '97 Nitro in August, which is awesome and crazy when Luger wins. What did you think about Lex being in the WWE Hall of Fame?
Oh, well, I mean, love it. It's long overdue. Like, he needed to be there. I think it's well deserved. I haven't necessarily followed a whole lot of kind of the conversation besides that he's going in, but I feel like there was some conversation about who's going to be able to induct him. So I'm excited for him.
Yeah, hopefully Sting, but he said as of today he hasn't even heard back about if Sting can induct him or not. So that's interesting. It's like
Oh,
2 weeks from
interesting.
now, and he hasn't heard back yet.
Well, going into the Hall of Fame, I really hope that whoever he kind of wants to bring him in, it's a moment. It's great. So
Yep.
I'm sure it'll work out.
So obviously you were a fan, but how do you get into the business? How did the opportunity for Anthem kind of come about, and how did you get into basically the sports end of things?
Yeah, for sure. So, a little bit of backstory about me. So I was working in tech at the time, in high school sports. So I was working on a software platform, and then that kind of turned into a whole lot of other things, and led us to a streaming service that maybe you guys have heard of. The company was Play On Sports. They're one of their brands is the NFHS network. So if you're a parent who has high school age kids, you're able to get a subscription and then watch the games from home, basketball games or soccer or whatever it is, football. And so I was working there. The company I worked for, we were acquired by Play On Sports. It was successful. High fives all around. It was great. I'd been there 8 years. Kind of achieved everything I wanted to at the time. They're headquartered in Atlanta. I was in Minneapolis at the time, and kind of made the call to move on and figure out what was next. And I was lucky enough to be connected in with some of the guys from Anthem through friends of friends, as you do. And it was kind of during the time when Scott had kind of made his departure. So I never had a chance to meet Scott Demore, but always heard really great things about him, and the way he did business. And they needed a little bit of support on the TNA Plus side as that was getting built up. So Michael Shuchenko and Anthony and Ariel and the whole team brought me in to support on that side of the business.
When you're working there, is it like in Toronto, Canada? Or are you remote? Like, are you going back and forth?
Yeah, so completely remote role. I mean, I think the fun part about TNA is that there's the TV tapings every couple weeks. So whenever we had to have like face-to-face sort of meetings, you kind of fly in to one of the events. You see everyone. You kind of get what you got to get done, and you can go back home. But primarily it was a lot of Zoom. We would use Slack every day. Great experience, fully remote.
When they do have those tapings, would you go there a lot? Like, would you go to a lot of the tapings?
Yeah, I mean, I was on the road with the TNA group, with everybody, the whole staff. I'd say probably from, geez, May of last year or June of last year. And then, I mean, if there was something that came up, you kind of would miss it, and have to skip one. But essentially, it's you got to be there in a lot of cases. It's really helpful to get a lot of work done, see people, shake hands, do the whole thing. And not only that, but it's just being around the fans and kind of immersing yourself in the brand is kind of in my mind what makes really good marketing. So I always wanted to be there too with the fans and kind of see what they were reacting to, but then also helping out. So I was on TNA Plus when I started, and then after Lou D'Angeli's departure, I think maybe about this time last year, I kind of got pulled in a little bit more into some of the live events, digital marketing, but then also like supporting the live events team. So, Raphael, Ross Foreman, Greg Bagarosi, like, everyone in the stadium. So, I would work on, high level sort of marketing stuff during the day. And then we go to the events and I'd be taking photos of fans with the Hardys at the meet and greets. So it's just like, no job too small sort of thing, great team atmosphere. When you're at the events, go to work, meet people, shake hands, see, immerse yourself in it.
Seems like you wore many hats, right? I mean, you kind of have to, right? When you're in that business.
Yeah, for sure. Again, it's one of those things, when I was coming in, the first thing that was told to me was just make sure to roll your sleeves up, roll your sleeves up, put your head down, get to work. There's always something to do. And, kind of keep that attitude of just no job too small. So, you be behind the merch stand, you help people pack up merch when you need to, you run around, you kind of corral people where you need those, you make sure that the box office has got what they need. If there's meet and greets, you stay till the end. You make sure everyone's happy in line while they're going to meet the stars and have a great experience. So yeah, kind of all over the map.
Let me hand it off to Lavie because I know he wanted to really get into that case study. He wanted to really examine that case
Oh,
study.
cool. It's great.
Yes, I've broken it down to its nth degree. So our Harvard case study. So, one of the first pieces that you focused on, in the article was to talk about the brand, how it had been basically tarnished, and was on the road to recovery, I would say, a little bit before your role began, and then it really accelerated in terms of improving. But like having that long history of this company and what you knew about it, like where did it stand, and like what could have been improved?
Yeah, great question. So, the best thing, TNA has a long history in the wrestling business. It's, 20 plus years, old. A lot of stars have been through. And initially when I came in, it was focused primarily on the digital side on TNA Plus and getting that app off the ground. We had a really big opportunity there. You guys know that the US TV distribution was with Access TV. And so not every home has it. A lot do, but TNA Plus was the ability for us to expand our reach and kind of give anyone anywhere the opportunity to watch TNA programming. So that was kind of the most exciting part for me when I came in, was just to think about, okay, how do we get more eyeballs on this? Because you guys know it's like this. It's all about the talent. It's all about the storylines that they're performing, and just making sure that people are able to watch it. The first time I walked into a show was Sacrifice in Windsor, Ontario of last year. And I remember looking around and going, wow, this is all so great. How do we get more people to pay attention to it?
One of the elements that was really interesting was the lapsed fans, as TNA has such a history that at certain points there were millions of people watching it on traditional cable television, and even online. I always talk about it, especially if I say something that TNA fans don't like. They'll find you and they have a lot to say, but it hasn't always translated, as far as we know, to box office and buy rates and those sort of things. So like, why was the focus put on like finding those fans? Like, how do you engage them and like want them to check out the current product?
Yeah, great question. So, really, I mean, as I was thinking about it, there's really like a two sort of prong strategy that we started with. The first one was building up our email list, and I know it sounds kind of old fashioned, but I think in my head of like, the email list is kind of those dedicated fans that want to receive, whatever information you have is, and it's a direct route for us to promote the storylines. Essentially take the photography that we get from ringside or whatever it is that the creative team wants to get across, and direct it right to a fan. And so like on a broad scale, that was kind of the first thing that we looked at, was just like, how are we reaching these people that is not like in the scroll on social media? Because while I love it, and the TNA has a really strong social media team, you guys probably see it. It's that was one of the channels. At least the email program was one of the channels that was kind of missing a little bit of TLC, if you will, at the time. And it also kind of gave us the ability to then kind of segment that out so that we could, approach people with, information about the events that are in their area. So we were able to do kind of the big storyline type stuff, like, is the system going to break up, with a big photo of someone pointing at someone else, and a click through to watch that content and start to get into the storylines. But then on the flip side, we were also able to kind of go deeper too. So it'd be like, hey, there's going to be a show in El Paso, let's make sure that everyone in El Paso knows what's going on there. The second prong, kind of beyond just the email program, is also just straight up digital marketing and media buys. So, we were able to take a look at all of the audience that we have, and we can kind of target them. If they've liked TNA in the past, odds are they're interested in getting more content from us now, or we could at least kind of, get them back. So, so that's kind of the second piece of that huge audience that we're talking about. And that's kind of how we targeted them.
Wonderful. So, a subject that John knows I belabor every week. So I think it'll be great to get your insight on this. I think in terms of engaging Labs fans, clearly, and it worked out very well, was actually utilizing the TNA name. To me, I was very against going back to TNA just because of, obviously, for as wrestling fans, that's what we think of first. But otherwise, like for a marketing perspective and so on, companies probably for 20 years have been like, what? Whereas the Impact, like, it seemed to be a brand that should work just because, Impact had been used so much. But during the Impact years, the company wasn't at its peak. So, like, maybe before stepping in, when you heard about the return to TNA, like, what did you think about it? And ultimately, do you think it was the right move?
That's a really great question. So, I mean, from my day to day, I didn't necessarily think about that at all. Primarily because, essentially when I walked in the door, it was, all right, we have what we have. Let's make this thing awesome. And let's, work with the team to build it out. As it comes, or when it comes to whether or not we should have changed the name back, I mean, there's a lot of brand equity, and, I think things kind of come back around. That's probably the strongest opinion that I have. That was one of the decisions that was made before my time. So I kind of didn't worry too much about it, if that makes sense.
Sure. So sometimes when there's like corporate synergy, like as fans, and I'll put myself in that bucket, sometimes like people take it too far. This company's working with that company, so this is definitely going to happen. One of the things that's a little bit unclear is like TNA working with Endeavor. So from what I understand, Endeavor hosts the technology that informs, the TNA Plus streaming service. But it seemed to be in the last 6 months that it felt like Endeavor was also helping to look for partners to distribute TNA a bit. What's the relationship as far as you know?
So as far as I know, the Endeavor relationship that we have is with the streaming platform. So those are who I worked with day to day. So, they have an office up on Park here, Endeavor Streaming. Love those guys. We had meetings with them, 2-3 times a week. They were essentially our business partners on the streaming side, wanting to make sure that it was successful, and managing kind of the product feature type pieces of the platform that we use.
So there's been recent promotions where I think if somebody signs up for longer, of course it's less expensive. When you wrote about packaging and pricing exercises to right size the streaming service, what does that mean?
Great question. So essentially it was, we used our user information or user data to kind of help us uncover the kind of packages and pricing that we needed to have. So, when I kind of came in, the packages were already kind of set up where you've got, you had 3 at the time. So you had your annual plan that I think was maybe $220 US at the time, gave you all the pay-per-views, all the live events. You had your $9.99 monthly, and then you kind of had this special attraction annual that was in the middle. It was great. We worked with it for a year, and we kind of watched how people interacted with it. Ideally, when it comes to TNA Plus, you want everybody on an annual plan, because they get everything that we have. They've got access to the library. They've got access to the live specials, all the pay-per-views. They kind of get the whole thing. At the end of at the end of the year, we kind of took a look at the data and we said, okay, great. What are we missing, and where are there opportunities for us to kind of, continue to bring those lapsed fans or, current fans who maybe aren't getting what they need or they don't have the channel or whatever it is back in. So towards the end of last year, we came out with a few new packages. So we dropped that special attraction annual plan. It just didn't make sense. No one was buying it. It was a little bit of a discount, but it didn't actually do much. And we lowered the price of annual to sign up more people. But then we also created the a seasonal plan that kind of fit in the middle, which was a 3-month plan. And all that information kind of came from the fact that, when people are buying pay-per-views, they're coming in, they're kind of buying right at the time the matches get announced. They're really excited to get in, and they're going to buy the pay-per-view. They want to see what happens, and it's great. So, the seasonal plan was meant to say, hey, we know you're coming in to buy the pay-per-view. We know you want to see the matches. You should stick around and watch what else is there. So, we'll make a plan that includes the pay-per-view in a way that it didn't before, but we're going to kind of round it out so that you can get 3 months, depending on when you buy, so that you can kind of see what happens after, and you can sample this a little bit more and, save a bit of cash as well. So, those plans were completely, created from, our team looking at user behavior, but then also we did surveys. So, we got some direct fan feedback at the end of last year to kind of say, what are you looking for? And like, how can we do this better? Because, our goal was always just to make sure that, fans are having a great time. They can access the content. It's a good product, and they can watch the great performances that, our wrestlers are doing in the ring.
So at certain times, I don't think over the last year, the service has sort of flirted with being like a catch-all, where there was like some independent wrestling, some other promotions. Had like through the surveys and so on, was there ever consideration to think about it like a Triller Plus type of service, and thinking about like who are our partnerships with? At this time it's AAA, maybe we could do something with them, or some Canadian companies that we have good relationships with, or it was more we have so much content, let's just stick to the TNA brand.
I mean, hey, I think, what you just said seems like really interesting and would have been a really fun thread to pull on. I'm not sure, but yeah, like that was really interesting. We definitely had conversations about what the strategy was going to be for 2025. Kind of through 2024, it was, hey, this thing is just kind of getting started out. We need to win back fan trust from kind of Impact Plus. And kind of build it up to, what we could see with behavior. This isn't going to be a surprise to you guys, but, like our biggest sign-up days, like Thursdays, when Impact is going to be on, you get kind of a bump maybe when Explosion hits on Friday, and then kind of around the live specials and the pay-per-views. So, it was always all about, how do you spread that out more?
What type of impact have talent that have really like broken through to another level had when they are like promoting something or sharing some sort of content? What comes to mind, of course, is Joe Henry first of all, and then certainly during her career there, Jordan Grace.
Yeah, absolutely love those guys. Great to work with. And also what an amazing story for both of them. Love to see Joe with the belt. It's very exciting. Total believer here. It was always great and easy to work with them. I mean, I think, one of the things that we, understood immediately when we kind of came in is that like, hey, TNA, the brand, has a lot of social media power, a lot of fans, like you said before, they're fans, they've been fans for a while, maybe they've lapsed, but we can win them back. But there's this whole other set of people that follow, our wrestlers, the talent themselves. And so like, if we were going to be successful, we needed to make sure that we had a great relationship with them. They are the stars after all. And so like anything we did is promoting their work and kind of standing on their shoulders. And also, like making sure that we had a great relationship so that when the time came where we said, hey, Joe, we need your help to promote something, like, he'd be interested in doing it alongside with us. And so, that relationship was there. And there's some great moments with Joe and Jordan when they, showed up on NXT or, and did their whole thing. And, we were able to kind of run with it and use it as a way to get people to sign up to kind of see what happens next. Did that
Yeah.
answer your question?
Oh, no, that was great.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect.
So one of the things that you wrote about is driving signups and live event ticket sales through marketing channels, and a number of different ones were listed, like TikTok, streaming television, and so on. Were there some that you found that were more effective? I love talking about live events that were
Yeah.
effective for like selling tickets, some more for TNA Plus, some for selling merchandise. Did it break down in that way at all?
Yeah, it totally did. I mean, if you've done, some digital marketing, like, the usual suspects are there. So we ran a lot with Meta, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. That did great. Google Google AdWords did well as well. We had a program running with that. It didn't do nearly as well as Meta. Meta's just got such powerful targeting settings there, with lookalike audiences, and, being able to target by location and by interest level, and just everything there is great. TikTok we tested, it didn't really work all that well for us. But it's TikTok is also primarily like an engagement medium. So whereas it didn't maybe work on the paid side for, live events to say, hey, come buy tickets. TNA definitely, we were building a lot on TikTok to kind of grow the typical organic audience.
One of the things that I found really interesting was the shift to move the TNA Plus distribution of the weekly show to align with what was being shown on Access TV, which makes so much sense because you have your most passionate fans that could then share information, their excitement on social media. Was that like one of the main drivers to do that?
It's really so it's funny. The actually, real quick, could you say the question one more time?
Sure. Yes, and
Yeah, please.
I'm notable for having these conflated things.
No,
So,
it's
what
great.
was
It's
he
great. It's
asking
great.
you?
I think
So
yeah,
with Impact having aired, on a particular day and time, TNA Plus, it seemed like it was sort of like distributed later, sort of like if you missed it, you could get it on TNA Plus, if that's correct. But later it was sort of like the TNA Plus distribution was aligned at the same time as Access TV, so everyone could experience it at the same time. Was one of the reasons for doing that, sort of because then everyone could share it on social media and have the experience together.
100%. Okay, cool. I did hear you correctly. Okay, perfect. No, 100%. So, you know, essentially, the first conversation that we all kind of had as a team was like, how do we get more people to watch this, and how do we get more people to sign up for TNA Plus? That was when I initially came in. Like that was the main goal. And we're kind of looking at everything and saying, if you're going to get the app and you're going to sign up and you're going to pay $10 a month to sign up, which is, when you've got Netflix and you've got Peacock and you've got all these different services, it's an additional one, and it was for TNA only, like you mentioned before. So, we kind of looked at the offering together as a team, and we were like, there's really one reason, one time a month to open the app. If you're just one time to open the app, and that's during the digital, like the live specials or pay-per-view, because they would go on and they were live, and you would watch it and you would chat with your friends on Twitter or Reddit or whatever it is. And so we said, man, we got to figure out other ways to have people open the app more often. And we were all kind of new, and we were like, hey, there has to be some reason why Impact's on at 10 p.m. on demand on the app. Sent a few emails out. I said, hey, I wonder if there's like a deal with like Access TV or whatever it was. And it turns out it was, the Access TV people who, love them, were like, we just don't want Impact to get ahead of us. So there's no commercials in an on-demand version. So you could kind of, have the show and post it later. And they were like, and I said, well, hey, like if we just edited commercials in, or commercial breaks, like, because we have you guys as, you're our premium partner, for US distribution, could we run it at the same time? And they said, yeah, it sounds great. So, we moved it down, and then that kind of allowed for, now you've got 5 times to open the app per month, at least once a week, where you've got Impact on, Thursday at the time with all of your friends, or watching on TV, you're up to speed, and then the live specials as well, or the pay-per-view. And so that was a big win for us.
One of the things that I'm not sure if it sort of crossed into your purview, but one of the things that I enjoyed seeing was that of course, we know with cable television now, there's a certain amount of distribution you could get. You could supplement with streaming, but very quietly, TNA started distributing replays of its programming on regional sports networks, like in Pittsburgh, Diginets, on Right Now TV, and so on. Like, how did that, as far as you're aware, how did that strategy come about? And was it sort of like supplement to give more ways that people could find the programming?
Great question. So that wasn't under my purview. That was likely Anthony at the time. Maybe a little bit over, maybe it could have been Leonard. Not exactly sure, who made those deals. But, I think kind of the spirit of where we were going is, a yes and sort of approach to viewership where, we were going to promote TNA Plus because we want people to, have access to TNA no matter where they are on the globe. It's a subscription service. You could buy a subscription, watch. But did we need US distribution as well? Yes. So yes, and so that, that sort of deal, was part of kind of the spirit of how the team was built out, where, we were going to try and pull all the different levers we can to bring more fans to watch the program.
One of the interesting things to watch over the last year has been the arena bookings. Like at certain times, and it made a lot of sense where it'd be like, okay, let's go to St. Clair College. We know we can fill it up. We have Scott D'Amore, who has been proing there forever. We can go to the Nashville studio and just with a couple hundred people, we could do multiple tapings and so on. And then there was test runs, if it can be defined as such, like in Vegas for a big show and PCO in the Montreal market and so on. But then suddenly, almost every show was booked in a 5,000 seat venue that could be scaled, of course. So, like, what was the strategy for that? Was there just the opportunity to sort of feel that we can sell more tickets? It'll look better on television. It's better for sponsorship. All of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think sitting here, I would say all of the above. But additionally, I'd say, maybe your next guest, you got to bring Raphael Morphy on to talk about some of the live event strategy. I was, lucky enough to be plugged into his world, likely around, June or July of last year, right about maybe, Slammiversary, and kind of, worked with him and Ross Foreman to, essentially, okay, you got this building, like, how are we gonna fill it? And so, Ross kind of took a lot of the grassroots sort of PR approach. So, getting the wrestlers on a media tour in the markets, and then kind of myself, and then, we had a larger team, further on in the year, including Sammy Callahan, Alicia Edwards, a whole bunch of people helping out kind of on the digital side of things. So yeah, you got to get Raph on. He's great, and I'm sure he would have a much better answer than I would on that question.
Too, and I recently learned more about him in a book about WrestleMania 3, where his coach in high school was mad that he skipped a baseball game or baseball practice, and he got to see WrestleMania 3. So besides his storied career as a marketing and pro wrestling executive, it was a wonderful profile of him threaded throughout this recent book.
Yeah, he's here in town too. You should buy him a coffee.
Awesome. Love to. So one of the things I think that's good about me is that I admit when I don't understand something. I'm getting my doctoral degree now, but it's only in one particular area. So sometimes certain terms, even though I study marketing, I don't know what that means exactly. So the first on your LinkedIn, but then you explained it more in the article. 100% subscriber growth of TNA Plus in year one, with a 4.55 all-in partnership LTV/CAC ratio. Users returned 4.55 times the revenue to partnership it cost to acquire them. So I think I understand that, but can you explain that more?
For sure. So LTV to CAC is it's a marketing metric based in a lot of like streaming services, SVOD, whatever it is, like product, services, online, digital. And it stands for, lifetime value of a user divided by the customer acquisition cost. So it's basically telling you, as a marketer, hey, we're spending a bunch of money to get somebody to sign up. Like, is there value for us? Are we making any money? Is there value, on top? So, a one is basically it's break even. You're spending just as much to get somebody as it is, as they spend on your product. And then, like a two times, three times, four times. So, essentially we're really proud of the fact that, we were acquiring people for TNA Plus, and it was pretty profitable for the company, 4.5 times, for the partnership. And I include Endeavor Streaming in that too. Like we were all one big family, if you will, with the streaming service. So yeah.
No, thank you. Actually, that sort of speaks to a broader question, which I didn't write down, but I think it might be helpful as much as you feel comfortable sort of sharing. So like, I know that there was just a big sale this week of Gravitas, right? The film production element,
okay.
which sort of seems like it didn't seem directly in the core of Anthem, but the core of Anthem, as I understand it, is distribution, from streaming to channels and so on, and assets, especially sports related assets like TNA and Invicta. So like, when you look at their executive website, which is sorely in need of an update, that's my words.
Okay. Yeah.
It seems like it's sort of, in a sense, like all rolled into one. Like a lot of people work on a lot of different things, with, of course, Len Asper, at the top. So like, would you like? And I know that in your LinkedIn profile you had touched on Invicta and the work that you did there. Like, is there a time like it's sort of like, okay, this is just what we need to do because this is the company we work for? Is there like a certain way you like divide up the work between the different divisions and departments?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I would consider, and I'm just trying to simplify here again. I don't know exactly specifically maybe how it's laid out, but the way I always kind of saw it is that Anthem is kind of a holding company with, like, you'd say maybe shared services, in air quotes, uh, with brands. And so, Shannon Knapp is the president of Invicta Fighting Championships. She's great. And TNA, the president is Carlos Silva, but Carlos Silva is also the sports group president, which, is a little different. But, essentially, you can work on both of the brands, as an Anthem employee. But also there's flexibility in there so that the brands themselves can kind of go out and hire who they need. So, for example, as Invicta was kind of coming back into prominence, with the CBS Sports Network, the fights that have, been on that network, we essentially didn't have a really strong grassroots program for Invicta. And so, we tapped in and said, hey, Ross, can you help us out on this? And so, he kind of came in and helped with a media tour in the last fight for Atlanta, and then a little bit more as well for the Oklahoma fight, which just wrapped up last Friday. So, it's kind of flexible, if you will, but that's kind of how I always saw it.
So with an 80% increase in live event attendance, I think like the team really went for it with the UBS arena, right? An NBA sized arena. And from what I could tell, UBS has been a great partner so far. There's been in arena appearances from talent. They have promoted on their social media and so on. So like, from your perspective, what was it like working with UBS Arena and like developing that partnership?
They have a spectacular team at the UBS Arena. I mean, it's a full service support staff for anyone who's going to be running an event there. Again, I keep saying business partners. They're true business partners with TNA. So, geez, we started talking to them last December, maybe a little bit earlier before the announcement, and align together what our media plan was going to be, in the lead up to the show, like how much budget were we going to spend, to let people know that the on sale was going to happen. where was it going to go, and then kind of, what are we going to do kind of at the interim, and then kind of what goes to the close, which is, likely, May, June, to kind of fill the stadium out once the matches come through. So, great team there, and, tons and tons of, we would say value add. So we talked to them about, where we're going to spend money, and it's like, hey, are we going to have wheat pasted posters up in the city? Were we going to do the LIRR subway billboards? We're going to be on college campuses. We're doing TV, all that sort of stuff. But then, additionally, that team, has the ability to work with the Islanders to, have ads on Islanders radio. That's, essentially, free for us. The same thing is true for, having our wrestlers come to the hockey games. And so we've done it twice. There might be another one coming up. Not exactly sure, but, that was what they provided to us, and they also have connections with, other email lists. So, we're able to hit TNA fans and say, hey guys, Slammiversary is going to be, in Greater New York City. It's going to be awesome. You should come. They're also able to kind of hit their email lists as well, including like UBS employees, which is a whole other piece. So, working with them has been great. I think there's a video that just came out too that got recorded before my departure, which was, some of our talent learning how to ice skate, which was great. So Masha, Casey Navarro, and Joe Hendry, before they went to the game, did a skit with some young hockey players, and, super fun. Chaos ensues, right? And so, that was all done in a day. And that was one of the pieces to say, hey, we might not be running a whole lot of like ads, because it's kind of in the dead period, maybe between, the excitement, the matches haven't been announced yet. But how do you stay in front of people and how do you keep their attention? So great team over there.
I'll have to go out of my way to see the skating video. I'm a big Masha Slamovich fan. It just happens that almost every time I've gone to a local show in New York, she's been on the card. And I typically am not somebody that's like, I need a picture, I need an autograph. But the opportunity was there, and I was like a little bit, not rude, but like Masha was talking to people, but I just knew that was my opportunity. So I was like, Masha, I apologize. Can I get a picture with the champ? And she was very accommodating with that. So that was good.
Love it.
So you've been very patient, and I appreciate that. So I just have like one overarching topic before I turn it over to John. So of course the WWE relationship, as that's grown, certainly, having some connectivity to Endeavor there played a part. But like, what impact did you see sort of on the TNA business? And an additional part that was really interesting to me was like when TNA promoted the Topps WWE card. So sort of like to see that marketing flow not only go one way, but the other way too.
Yeah. Super fun. Love, the relationship between the two brands. I mean, it's a marketer's dream because it kind of helps provide that anything can happen feel to wrestling, which is, something that, is sometimes tough, to capture. And so, having people show up on other people's shows, you weren't quite exactly sure when that was going to happen. That was very exciting, and additionally, just the cross promotion, is great. I mean, the WWE brand, NXT brand, it's huge. And, just having them, I remember texting, one of the people on our digital team. I don't remember which pay-per-view. It might have been Genesis, because that was when we signed the deal. But they said TNA Genesis on the air. And I remember being like, could you ever have expected that to happen? So, like that was super cool on our end. And, there's the ability to kind of allow, our stars to have some exposure on their programming and kind of see how that world works. And, also have their stars come to our side as well and kind of see both sides. And yeah, get exposed to kind of what's different kind of way of doing things is very exciting. The Topps card, that was it was Rob. Rob formerly worked for WWE, and he was, I would say, overjoyed at the deal because he said, "Oh my gosh, I can finally call some of the people that I know from the past who continue to work with WWE that I brought in, and oh man, like they're now going to be able to work with us because we have this relationship." So there wasn't any sort of taboo competitive issues with Topps promoting WWE cards on TNA programming. So love it, all positive.
So when you look at what you wrote, right, the playbook, if you will, of everything that you put down there from last April to this April, were you surprised at being released or, not working there anymore? Or was that something where it's 1 year deal? You guys did what you're supposed to do in that year.
Great question. I mean, I would say I was surprised, but also, not at the same time. So, initially I came in, as part of the team with Anthony and with Ariel and kind of that group. When Carlos comes in, anytime there's a new president, I was excited to work with him. He's got a great, great resume, in private equity and in sports. So, this is a decorated guy who comes in, and essentially you kind of know when a new president comes in, you've got, time to prove yourself or, or, you know, or not so much, they're going to be making the calls. And so, in my world, you kind of knew that, there would be some changes that were going to go on and you just kind of do your best to put your head down and keep working. And so, was I surprised? For sure. But completely very much proud of the work that we did, over the past 12 months. And by the way, he has his team. And so he brought in his team of people who have great resumes as well. So, I'm thrilled to see what they do with the brand. I like to think that we built a really great platform for them to keep rolling with. And really excited to see where it goes from here.
From rebrand to resurgence, which is a great line that you put out there. Very great article, basically that you put together. That playbook is great. But if you look at it, everything, like you said, is executed so well. You guys did such a good job. They're stepping into something that's probably easier for them now that you guys did all that kind of groundwork, if you will. You know what I mean? They should be able to be able to execute after you guys executed.
Fingers crossed. I think, we did what we did with what we kind of had. And I think, there are a lot of other tricks, so, for instance, one of the things, that was being discussed, so, Andrea, who's running marketing, she comes in and she's got, also a great resume. She's got some very big sports organizations on her resume. And, additionally, all of kind of the knowledge of how they've been able to fill their stadiums. So, I'm really, when I kind of left, there was conversations about all the different other sort of channels that we could be using. Some of the things that, didn't cross my radar because I just didn't know. So, I think, I'm really excited to see where they go with it.
The results were loud. You guys made it even louder. You did a really great job with TNA. I'm always just shocked, and me and Lavie talk about it all the time. It's like, wow, they have all this success, and then they always change something. It's like, well, El Paso, there's no way they're going to make any changes. El Paso legitimately killed it. It's huge crowds, and then they make changes again. And we're just always surprised. I don't know why. It's like they're like destined to change no matter what. Like they're too many changes.
It's the only one constant in life, John.
Yeah,
Change.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, but you know what? Hey, to leave you guys with this, so proud of the work, so proud of the team. There's things on Twitter about the people that I worked alongside. Change is a constant, but Chevy, Rob, Ariel, Gail, like the whole team, everyone that kind of, that we moved on into the future with. Great group of people, super fun to work with. The work speaks for itself, and made a ton of friends. So, there are worse things than going off on a heater. And I'm thrilled again, like I said, to see exactly where this new group takes everything. So it'll be really fun.
Where can everybody find you, follow you, social media wise and otherwise?
Yeah, so on Twitter, I'm at Romy Glazer, ROMYGLAZER. My website's romyglazer.com. Instagram as well. Feel free to reach out and connect. I've been figuring out what's next, which is always really exciting and a fun conversation. Having conversations with a bunch of folks, looking for the right fit. So, excited, for the next chapter. And always interested in connecting with listeners on this show, if there's something really exciting to work on together.
All right. Romy, thank you so much. Really appreciate all the time tonight.
Guys, what a pleasure. This was fun.
Thanks so much. Take care.
All right, perfect. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Lavie, before we wrap this bad boy up and hit the plugs, I got to talk one story because it's so intriguing, so kind of weird, maybe, and kind of strange. But CMLL, I know they get a lot of tourists, and I know they get a lot of like special people. But Olivia Rodrigo is kind of a gigantic megastar. What the heck is she doing at CMLL?
Yeah, I feel cool, like, because my daughter's a big fan. I think we tried to get tickets to Madison Square Garden in the last year, but they were like sold out right away and like ridiculously priced. We thought the WWE, right, holiday show is expensive. I think it just speaks to the culture in Mexico and the place that Lucha Libre, especially CMLL and also AAA to another extent, has, where you could have a superstar that would, like, maybe she's a WWE fan too, I don't know, but like where it's sort of like it has like a different cachet. You're like traveling the world, you better experience some of the coolest things, whether it's a football match or like a particular form of entertainment or wonder of the world type of thing. And like when you're in Mexico, you go see CMLL, like I've talked about to a different degree. My sister-in-law, who, when she went to Mexico, she went to a mask making workshop, and then she saw CMLL at Arena Mexico, and I was like, "You did?" Like, it just translates in a different way. But I think like when people talk about like lucha hitting huge here in the U.S., like I don't think Olivia Rodrigo is looking to sign up to do something like that now, but you really like are going to need people like that crossover in that sort of way to champion that. Maybe today it's a little bit easier because like it doesn't have to be the Hollywood star or the most popular pop star in the world. It can be someone like the Paul brothers, that sort of thing. But like you need someone that's like genuinely interested, that like wants to like more give than receive, but they're just like a huge fan of it, and like to carry over into the mainstream in a way to like establish itself more. Obviously, with Rey Mysterio and all of that, like Lucha Libre is as big as it's ever been, but like to like a huge degree, you sort of like need someone that will bring people in and cross it over.
Quickly, I have to mention this as well. OVW sold again. I promise this will be the last story. It just so, because I don't know if we'll be able to get to this next time. I feel like it might be old news, but it's sold. What the heck is going on at OVW?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were sweating when they heard Morley Sports Management. They're like, "Oh no!" if you follow Sean Morley on social, but
he's the
first.
best.
OVW are pleased to announce that Morley Sports Management Limited will acquire majority shareholder. They are currently owners and operators of Haverfordwest County, who are a professional soccer league based in Wales and play in the nation's Premier League. Like, just to explain, as far as I understand, like not the Premier League in terms of like the level A or however it's described. They're sort of like a semi-professional team, as far as I understand. They've been around 125 years. The most informative thing that I could talk about is actually Gil Corsi, who I believe is an on-screen announcer for Dave Marquez's promotions. He wrote a great article, and I think there was also a news piece about it for WDRB. So I'm going to read that. United Kingdom-based company buys Louisville's iconic OVW. The ownership team behind OVW, which includes Mayor Craig Greenberg, has sold a controlling stake to a sports management company based in the UK. OVW announced Monday that Wales-based Morley Sports Management will take control of its operations. Skip ahead. Monday's announcement marks the third acquisition of OVW in 4 years and the fourth since 2018. It was getting hard to continue. OVW minority owner and Kentucky Sports Radio host Matt Jones said in a phone interview. Actually, that's interesting. I thought he was the majority owner. Oh, but well, actually, talking about the sales, right? He did sell it within the last year. Of course, Matt has been kind enough to be on our show twice. We had to get by for the last year. OVW is a legacy promotion. This is interesting. I guess we'd have to sleuth this later, but it airs the only locally produced live weekly pro wrestling TV series in the country and is highly regarded in the sports entertainment industry as the Harvard of pro wrestling. Many of the industry's biggest stars train there. Founder Danny Davis Briley sold the company in 2018 to a collection of investors going by the name Gladiator Sports Network. Gladiator sold its majority holding to a team fronted by Jones with the additional financial backing of Mayor Greenberg and others in late 2020. Control changed hands once again in December 2023 when a strategic partnership was announced between OVW and Genvec Ventures, a biomedical company. The strategic partnership marks a pivotal moment in OVW's history, said the announcement, introducing Ed Payer as the company's new chief executive officer. It was a fusion of financial stability and a shared vision for Genvec Ventures that promises to elevate our brand and the world of professional wrestling. Jones said OVW has not reached profitability in the 4 years. The company gained new exposure when it was featured in Netflix series Wrestlers. The show took viewers behind the scenes, highlighting the personal and professional lives of talent, and the small staffers led by Al Snow. We're trying to grow a financially stressed yet lauded regional wrestling company. So great in-depth article. Interesting to see an ownership group, including founder Rob Edwards. We want to empower those within the business to help us achieve new heights within the industry. So definitely check out the article. I don't know how many fifth chances OVW gets at this point. Hopefully it works out here. I think everyone's trying to say, okay, it has the legacy of having trained some of WWE's legacy, biggest stars, but that's when it was an official affiliate. But what can you do with it now?
Well said. Let's wrap this bad boy up and head towards the plugs. Big week here. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. How about you, Lavie?
Follow me on X, Lavie Mark, LAVIE, Check out my long-form articles on lioncubjobsearch.com and check out LinkedIn, The Business of the Business. And John, 229 episodes in, I think this is one of the most fun ones that we've done to date.
I loved going in depth on TNA. We do it so much, but with an actual employee that worked there, did so much research. And had put awesome stuff up there on that playbook, if you will. So great stuff. So great episode. Great job, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here and next week for a little business of the business. See you next week, folks.